This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habayim. We were scheduled to meet with Rabbi David Hirsch this morning, and he was going to graciously answer some of the questions that we had on Mishnas Sofrim, but unfortunately, because of the Levaya of Rabbi Glatstein, Zechat Zavracha, he's not able to join us this morning. I'll keep you posted when we're able to reschedule, hopefully as soon as possible. Today we're going to learn Ois Mem Peshuta, Ois Mem Kfufa, Ois Mem Peshuta. Let me bring it up on the screen. Here we go. Ois Mem. There's the Mishnas Sofrim, Ois Mem Pesucha. It's interesting. Here it's not called Kefufa like we have by the other letters that have doubles. Instead it's called a Mem Pesucha, the open Mem. Tmunasa Ktsas Kamay Chaf Vav. It's a bit like a Chaf and a Vav. So here in diagram 1, you have a Chaf and a Vav, and if you sort of put them together on a bit of an angle, you get a Chaf and a Vav together. Al Kaintia Lamala Letzadmin Agula. Therefore, the top right part should be rounded. But on the bottom it should be squared. So in diagram 2, you have the rounded part on top right by the aleph, and you have the pointed part bottom right by the base. Uveloi akev. It should be without a heel. Without a heel means without this little appendage that we have in diagram 3. V'gaga yia lamala shava. On top, the roof should be straight, v'loy agol, and not rounded. Okay, like in diagram 5. Rak litzad yamin yia agol. Only on the right side it should be rounded. Gam yia gaga oruch ad keneged moishava tachton. Likewise, like we have in diagram 6, the roof should be long enough that it's equal on bottom to its base. Okay, so you see that in diagram 6. Everything that all the above mentioned is charchila, but if you don't have it, it's not puzzle. The hachartaim. I always translate the chartam as the nose, but this nose, Shabbatzad smile on the left side, Yizayar lidbaik oisai lagaga. You should make sure to connect it to its roof. So like in diagram 8, you should make sure to connect it to the roof, like over here. It's a bit connected. It should be pretty much equal to the roof. See? Like in diagram 8 over here, let's just make this bigger. It should be, it's not so clear. It should be here. Here we have the line. Make it bigger, I could see it better. Here we have a line. It should be equal to the roof. There should be like a little notch in between them. The image of the chartam should be like a vav. So like we have in diagram 9, it's basically a chaf with a vav on a bit of an angle. I made this mutik tasba alaksain. It should be tilted a bit on an angle. V'loy harbe. V'yagia ad keneged moishev hatachtoin ve'ad bechlal. And it should reach until the lower base, including the lower base. Meaning this vav should go all the way down till it reaches the lower base, and it should be equal to the lower base. However, so everything we said until now, it seems like it's only charchila. But the following is a problem. Be very careful that it's not touching. You don't want the bottom of the vav to be touching the bottom of the chaf. What would the halacha be if it's touching? We'll see. There should not be a big interposition between them. Should not be a big separation. So this way the vav would be very much on a diagonal. So let's see. Let's say in diagram 11, this vav is really an out there vav. Now, If there's the vav is not connected to the chaf on top, v'ner chavav puzzle. Vein moyolai taken betfona mezuzas. But tona mezuzah is not going to help to fix it. Im kasav acharav, if he wrote after it, to have a shaloi kasidron, because it would be out of order. Because el b'simin lamed beis siv chav hey ayin shem mishabura. So that's going to be out of order. How v'huadin in hidbuk hachartem lamata b'makam sichas elamim de pasal. Likewise, like we had in diagram 10, if the bottom of the vav is going to be connected to the chaf, it's going to be pasal. Mavur dina le'elbasim lam vesif yirches le'inyan tikun em loy kasav adayin acharav b'tfilin umezuzais. Where it's going to be pasal, and it's explained earlier in Siman Lamed Vesif Yirches regarding tikkun. If you didn't write anything afterwards, how would you fix it? In other words, the question, I guess, would be, can you just scrape in between, or is that going to be an issue of chak tuchais? That we have to see earlier. Okay, so that's the mem pesucha.
When he says this, when he says there's an issue of like a sidron, if the chav and the vav are separate, does he mean only if something's written afterwards, or in and of itself?
Yeah. No, if something's written afterwards.
Meaning I could write the chav and the vav and then connect them, because there's no ksav of a mem yet. I could connect them.
Yeah.
Afterwards, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about the final mem, the mem sesuma. The mem sesuma. Here he brings in diagram 15, by the way, it's interesting. The Svardim, the way they make the mem, is if you minik hasardim she'in mamshichin hakav shalamala ad kenegin meshava hatachtoin. They don't make the bottom of the mem reach the bottom moshev, so it's more like a nun and above, not a chaf and above, as opposed to. Okay, we make a chaf and above. Svardim make a nun and above. Let's see the final mem. Ois mem sesuma. So the way the final mem looks is like in 19, rounded top right, squared bottom, both bottom corners. The chartia, the chachila agula outside yamin. On top it should be rounded on the right side. Ulamata yelo zavasli min small. On the bottom it should have a corner on the right and the left side. Shaloi tehineris kasamach. You don't want it to look like a samach, but it's rounded on the bottom, it looks like a samach. Vim lo yasakein, if you didn't make the bottoms pointed, vahatina kara kasamach, and a kid reads it like a samach, psula. So the Pri Megadim says, you know what? You're better off not making rounded top right, because it could still look like a samach. You're better off squaring it like in number 20 in the top right corner. The Pri Megadim kasav shetav yosef shetim merubas mikol tzad. It would be very easy to make a mistake and see it as a samach. It should be sealed on all sides. The gaga and its roof. It should pass a little bit beyond its ceiling, like the oizvav. Basically, you want the left side of it could be a vav. Like in diagram 21, where he darkens the little bit of the appendage and the left stand, so it's basically an oisvav. Don't make the top left the roof too long. What if you did uvediavad and vediavad yigrar hamoiser? Just scrape the extra. Just scrape. It's chak tuchais because it was puzzle if it was too long. No, there's no problem of chak tuchais. The shalai kasidron, and it's not a problem of shalai kasidron. The nimsa kain b'shem hakodesh. If you found this kind of mem in God's name, ein l'sakne, don't fix it because you're not supposed to erase in Hashem's name. B'yishar kach, let it remain that way. V'kashar. V'gam b'Shabbos ein l'hoitzi acheres avor zeh. Even on Shabbos, likewise, you should not take another one out because of this. Now, this is very interesting. So you're allowed to scrape the longer, the long roof of the mem. There's a very interesting Sha'ar Tzion. I think that will shed light on one of the questions we had by the Ois Hey. If you remember earlier, and Mendy wrote down this question, by the Ois Hey we had that the leg of the hay is supposed to extend, is supposed to be by the end of the roof, opposite the end of the roof. Well, what do you do if it's opposite the middle of the roof? So the Mishnah Berurah said that this is not going to be an issue, right? The Mishnah Berurah said, if you look by the Ois Hey, the Mishnah said by Ois Hey, "V'loi tia hanakuda neged emtza hagag ela neged soifa b'tzad small v'im asa be'emtza psula." If you made it in the middle, it's mamish pasal. V'tzarch l'sakna. How? Dahainu l'gora u'la'amida b'soifa. So we asked, it's chaktuchais. How could you scrape off the end of the hay? But l'chayra, if it's pasal, if the leg is in the middle, by scraping off the end of the hay, it's chaktuchais. So the Mishnah Sofrim said, if you wrote the letters afterwards and you can't be masakin it because shaloi kasidran, then you could still scrape it, which is also a pella. Why isn't that shaloi kasidran? So here, by the way, in the Sha'ar Tzion, the Sha'ar Tzion says, you know why you're allowed to scrape the mem? Peirush d'loi ma'akiv davar she'enim tzibet something that's not found in the Gemara is not ma'akiv. V'gam lo yodif mehei sharagla be'emtza. It's no worse than a hay that the leg is in middle of the word. So just like by hay, look in diagram 23. Diagram 23 is the picture of something in the Sha'ar Tzion. By the way, we'll give the Paralach a nice plug over here, because here he has diagrams, mamish, for every point mentioned, not only in the Mishnah Sofrim, but in the Sha'ar Tzion as well. The Sha'ar Tzion is saying, you know why you had to scrape off the roof of the mem? It's no worse than scraping off the top of the hay. Now, we never understood, right? Mandy, that was one of our questions. We don't understand why you're allowed to scrape off the top of the hay. Because if a hay is puzzle, if the roof is too long, by scraping off the top, that's classic chaktuchais. And nevertheless, you're allowed to do that. If I'm not mistaken, at the time we said a kiddush that even a letter that's puzzle, but if the reason it's puzzle is because it doesn't meet the requirements of the Gemara, but not because it's lacking in the Tzuras ha'os. So a hay with a very long roof is a hay. It looks like a hay. It's just, you're not yotzi with such a hay. So you're allowed to fulfill a halachic requirement by scraping. You just can't create Tzuras ha'os by scraping. But the Sha'ar Tzion says certainly in the case of the mem, you'd be allowed to scrape off the excess roof of the mem. Okay, Rabbi said we'll hold it over here. And hopefully we'll have good news. We'll be able to meet tomorrow or in the immediate future. And the Tzuras Tavos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.